It is, by their own admission, a bizarre story.
It is very confusing. I still feel confused.
I've never seen anyone like it.
On the morning of August 29th, 2016, 22-year-old Mitchell Tromp walked into a police station in Wangaratta, Australia. He was barefoot, disoriented, and covered in scratches. He claimed he had just escaped a car that was following him, but when asked why, Mitchell had no answer. He wouldn't say a word about his family. His mother, father, and 2 sisters had all vanished, and Mitchell wasn't the only one acting strange. 3 days earlier, the entire Tromp family had packed into a car, abandoned their phones, passports, and credit cards, and drove straight into the Australian countryside as if they were being hunted. By what? No one knows. And what police uncovered next only deepened the mystery. To this day, the Tromp family disappearance remains one of the strangest missing persons cases Australia has ever seen. Hello and welcome back, or welcome if you're new here. This is The Prime Crime, where we discover and dissect solved and unsolved criminal cases around the world. Today's story is unlike anything you've ever heard. It's a case that shook Australia, baffled experts, and left behind a trail of questions that still have no answers.
I've never seen anyone like it.
Before we begin, we'd like to send our condolences to everyone affected by the events in this case, especially the friends, neighbors, and loved ones caught in the confusion and fear that followed. The day everything changed. It started like any other morning in the quiet town of Sylvan, Victoria. The Tromp house sat surrounded by farmland, nestled among rows of berry fields. It was peaceful, predictable, the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever really happens. But on Monday, August 29th, 2016, that serenity shattered. Inside the house, something felt off. There was no calm, familiar rhythm of a regular morning. Instead, there was confusion, hushed voices, and a growing sense of urgency. Mark Tromp, the father, was agitated, pacing, muttering under his breath. He kept saying they had to go, now, before it was too late. Jacoba, his wife, looked pale and distant, like she wasn't fully present. The daughters, Rihanna and Ella, were moving quickly through the house, but no one was speaking clearly. No one explained what they were packing for, and Mitchell, the 22-year-old son, watched it all unfold in disbelief. Phones were being left behind, passports, wallets, credit cards, deliberately dumped into a pile on the kitchen counter. Mark said they were being watched, that someone or something was after them. No one outside the family could be trusted. Not the government, not banks, not even the internet. They had to disappear, so they got in the car, all 5 of them, and drove off. No goodbyes, no messages to friends, not even a destination, just away. On that morning, the Tromps left behind more than just their belongings. They left behind logic. They left behind reality. And as they drove deeper into the countryside, what began as a strange family road trip would unravel into one of the most unsettling mysteries Australia has ever seen. Back then, on that first day, no one outside the family had any idea that the Tromps were missing. But soon the Tromps will have the entire nation glued to their TV screens, trying to understand why. Who were the Tromps? Before the headlines, the manhunt, and before the mystery took hold of an entire country, the Tromps were just a quiet, hardworking family living on the outskirts of Melbourne. They owned and ran a successful red currant and berry farm in Sylvan, Victoria. Mark Tromp, the father, was known to be practical, routine-driven, and private. He handled the farm's finances and was considered meticulous, bordering on obsessive about security. Jacoba, his wife, was gentle and soft-spoken. She helped manage the farm and rarely strayed from the family's tight-knit structure. They had 3 adult children, Rihanna, 29, who was quiet and reserved, 22-year-old Ella, a more independent spirit who ran her own gardening business on the side, and Mitchell, also 22, the only son. He was known for being level-headed and dependable. On the surface, they were normal, hardworking, stable, private, yes, but not strange, not until that week. They weren't a family known to take risks. Neighbors described them as polite, bit distant, but nothing out of the ordinary, which is why what happened next shocked everyone. They were the last family anyone expected to vanish into the wilderness without a trace, but they did. A road to nowhere. There was no map, no plan, no real explanation. The Tromp family simply drove. Mark was behind the wheel, locked in focus. She helped manage the farm and rarely strayed from the family's tight-knit structure. They had 3 adult children, Rihanna, 29, who was quiet and reserved, 22-year-old Ella, a more independent spirit who ran her own gardening business on the side, and Mitchell, also 22, the only son. He was known for being level-headed and dependable. On the surface, they were normal, hardworking, stable, private, yes, but not strange, not until that week. They were the last family anyone expected to vanish into the wilderness without a trace, but they did. A road to nowhere. There was no map, no plan, no real explanation. The Tromp family simply drove. Jacoba sat beside him, quiet, staring out the window. The three adult children, Mitchell, Ella, and Rihanna, sat in the back, confused but quiet. Whatever was happening, no one dared challenge Mark. They passed towns without stopping, ignored signs, took back roads where they could. Every so often, Mark would mutter something about trackers, about needing to stay off the grid. Mitchell, the most skeptical of the bunch, had questions, lots of them, but none were answered. And slowly, the tension inside the car started to curdle. Hours passed. Paranoia thickened. Eventually, Mitchell had enough. Somewhere near Bathurst, over 800 kilometers from home, he got out of the car. He said he couldn't do it anymore. The fear, the silence, the blind obedience. It was too much. He left his family behind on the side of the road and took a train back toward Melbourne. That should have been the end of it. But in many ways, that was only the beginning. Because with Mitchell now gone, things only got stranger. Mark's paranoia deepened. His words became harder to follow. The family's movements grew more erratic. And over the next 24 hours, the Tromps would not stay together. They would start to scatter, one by one. And soon, none of them would know where the others were. Scattered like dust. With Mitchell gone, there was no one left to question what was happening, no voice of reason. The Tromps kept driving. Eventually, they reached Genelin Caves, a remote and winding part of the New South Wales countryside. But it wasn't a stop, it was a fracture point. Without warning, Ella and Rihanna, the two daughters, split off from their parents. They took the family car, leaving Mark and Jacoba behind in the wilderness. Why? No one knows. But it's clear by this point, whatever had gripped this family was tearing them apart. Ella and Rihanna drove toward Goulburn, hundreds of kilometers away. Somewhere along that journey, they reported their parents missing to the police. But even that act felt confused, as if they weren't sure what was real and what wasn't. Were their parents in danger? Were they running from someone or something? Then things took another turn. Rihanna vanished. After arriving in Goulburn, she separated from Ella and disappeared completely. Just gone. No phone, no money, no explanation. She would later be found in the back of a stranger's moving truck, disoriented and hiding, clinging to silence. She refused to speak, refused to explain. It was as if her mind had folded in on itself, swallowed by something unseen. And while the sisters spiraled in one direction, Mark and Jacoba were spiraling in another. Now alone, the parents were wandering the countryside, on foot. Their movements became even more erratic, harder to trace. They were no longer running from something. It seemed they were running from everyone. By the end of the second day, the Tromp family was scattered across multiple towns, in 3 different directions. 5 people had left home together, but now not a single one of them knew where the others were. The story was unraveling fast, and it was only just beginning to reach the public eye. Found but not whole. For nearly a week, the Tromp family was everywhere, and nowhere at the same time. News alerts, police bulletins, search parties. The Tromps dominated the Australian media. It began with Mitchell, of course. He was the first to surface, found barefoot and scratched, wandering into a police station in Wangaratta. Unable, or unwilling, to say where his family was. Next came Rihanna. She was discovered in a state of confusion, hiding in the bed of a stranger's truck in Goulburn. She wouldn't speak. She couldn't explain how she got there. And when police tried to question her, she broke down and had to be hospitalized under mental health care. Then came Jacoba. She was found wandering the streets of Yas, over 600 kilometers from home, alone and severely disoriented. She too was taken into psychiatric care. Mark, the father, was the last to be found. A few days later, he was spotted by a young couple near the town of Wangaratta. They described him darting through the trees, hiding in shadows, as if terrified he was being followed. When police finally caught up to him, he refused help. He seemed paranoid, rambling about danger and needing to be left alone. He was held overnight by police, but later released, having committed no crime. Which left only Ella, the youngest daughter, the only one who throughout the ordeal showed no signs of mental distress. In fact, she was the one who reported her parents missing. She was also the only family member who never left the car voluntarily, never ran, never hid, never broke down. It was Ella who drove her sister Rihanna to Goulburn. Ella who returned to the family home days later. Ella who seemed calm. The family had been found. Even though fragmented, they were all found. But the mystery, that had only just begun. Because none of them, not one, could give a clear answer to the question haunting the entire country. What were they running from? No one knows why. By now, the Tromps had all been found, but something was still missing. The answers. No one, not even the police, could explain what had happened. There was no threat, no enemies, no drugs, no cult. The family wasn't in debt, and none of them had a criminal record or prior mental health diagnoses, at least not officially. And yet, they'd fled their own home like fugitives, driven thousands of kilometers with no phones, no money, no plan, split up, vanished, panicked, and they refused to explain why. Rihanna and Jacoba both spent time in psychiatric facilities. Mark became reclusive. Mitchell, the first to resurface, gave interviews later, but even he couldn't piece it together. He said the family was afraid. He just didn't know of what. And Ella, she stayed silent, the calmest one of all, and also the most mysterious. What began as a family road trip had become a national mystery. What happened to the Tromp family didn't just confuse people, it disturbed them. Because if it could happen to one seemingly normal, loving family, what's stopping it from happening to any one of us? Theories, shadows, and silence. Some psychologists offered a term, shared delusional disorder, also known as folie familiale, a rare psychological phenomenon where a delusion is passed between closely connected people. It fit the profile. One dominant figure, likely Mark, spiraling into paranoia and pulling the rest of the family with him. But that didn't explain everything. Why did Mitchell, the skeptic, still end up barefoot and hiding? Why did Ella stay calm? Why did the panic begin at all? And it definitely didn't explain how a family that left in fear of being tracked wound up being tracked by the entire country. Others speculated about stress, that the pressures of running a family business or financial struggles had pushed them over the edge. But there was no evidence of debt, conflict, or even major health issues. Some pointed to isolation. The family rarely socialized. Maybe paranoia just built up in the vacuum. They were essentially a perfectly normal family, until suddenly they weren't. Thanks for watching The Prime Crime. If you thought this case was strange, wait until you hear about the woman who disappeared inside a hotel, captured on camera, but never seen alive again. That story's coming on Saturday. Till then, drop your theories about the Tromp family in the comments.